It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey guys, Brad Gilmore here. Want to give a big shout out to our title sponsor, Walker Texas Lawyer. If you or a loved one have been injured in an accident, whether that be a car, truck, motorcycle accident, or some kind of other issue, hit up Walker Texas Lawyer at 713-552-1117 or walkertexaslawyer.com.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Matthew McConaughey.
Brad Gilmore.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how we doing?
I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Jessica Alba and Lizzie Mathis. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Kevin Costner joins us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leno joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Chris Tucker is in the building. Chris Tucker, good morning to you.
Hey, Brad. Good morning to you. How are you?
George Lopez joins us right now. George, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What lovely to talk to me. Funny lad.
Megan Trainor.
Thank you so much, Brad. You're awesome.
Chloe Bailey joins us. I appreciate the time.
Appreciate you.
And more. This is The Collection. Now your host, The Boat.
Brad Gilmore! I'm so excited to be talking to our guest right now. He is the producer of the podcast. It's been nominated for awards. It's won awards. It's the man who calculated death. The producer joins us right now, Mr. John Cryer. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me, Brad.
Hey, you know what? Congratulations on this show. I know that you love podcasts. You know, you've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years really diving into that realm. I know you've been guest on many of shows. You've even been a guest host on many of shows, going back to the undisclosed days. So congratulations on everything you're doing in the medium.
Oh, thank you. I love it. I'm just addicted to it, mostly because I walk my dogs, and it is the thing that makes walking my dogs so much fun. Although I get very emotional. Which people are like, why is that guy crying and walking his dogs? What is going on with that guy? But I love it as a medium, and I love it. I listen to it when I'm driving. So being a part of them is really fun for me.
You know, I don't know if it was the same for you or when you really dove into them. For me, it was, and I'm probably not a unique story, but it was the Serial podcast. You know, when I heard Serial and Adnan Syed and that case and the way it was produced, Sarah Koenig, everyone who had anything to do with that one made you go, wow, this is such a great show. And this is a great way to tell a story.
Yeah, it was a beautifully told story. And the thing about like hearing something in your ear with people's voices really intimately in your ear, it brings it to you in a way that just feels really close. You know, and I love it as a medium.
And this show has and I bring up Serial not only because it was my entry point to the medium, but this show, The Man Who Calculated Death, has that vibe to it, to where I was listening to the first episode, and as soon as like we're getting to the end of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get to the next one right now. I got to know what's going to happen, because what a fascinating story. And the way that it's laid out, just episode one and through the rest of them, the way it's laid out is beautiful. So let me ask you first, how did you hear about this story, which is about a gentleman who helped Hitler create the first missile?
Yeah, built one of his most terrifying weapons. Yeah. Basically, it's the craziest thing. I was at a dinner party with a friend of my wife's, a woman named Suzanne Rico, who she's known here in LA because she was the anchor woman on CBS News. And she knew that I was a nut about the space race. The history of the space race is really fascinating to me, and astronauts and all. And I actually went to Russia for a while and trained as a cosmonaut. I would be a really crappy cosmonaut. Just by the way, that is what I discovered in my training in Moscow. But at any rate, she knew I was an aficionado of that kind of thing. And so she kind of offhandedly said, "Oh, my grandpa worked on the space program." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." And he said, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, before that, he worked for Hitler." But anyway, da da da. And she's like, "Hey, would you like some milk with your coffee?" And I said, "I'm sorry, Suzanne, you're going to have to tell me more about that story." And my wife and I have a production company. My wife Lisa and Suzanne went into this whole crazy story where her mother had passed away a couple years before that, and her mother had left an unfinished memoir. And on her deathbed, her mother had asked Suzanne to finish the memoir. And so Suzanne, was kind of overwhelmed with this request from her mother, and she just dove into this area of her family history that she had always been really reticent to go into, because when she knew her grandfather was a scientist. She knew that he was in wartime Germany, so in all likelihood he was working for the Nazi government. What she did not know was that he was one of Hitler's most important scientists, and that his wife was killed mysteriously at the end of the war. And so she had to dive into all of that and sort of deal with the complicity of her grandfather in one of the worst regimes that ever existed on Earth. And to her credit, and that's the thing. By the way, thank you for mentioning the award. She just won an award for writing it, for the Gracie Awards, which are of the Alliance of Women in Media, gave her an award for writing it, and she's done an amazing job. I mean, I wish I could take credit for it. Basically, my wife said this should be a podcast, and she convinced Suzanne to do that. And so Suzanne spent like the next 6 years of her life doing that, and my wife and I produced it. But Suzanne really deserves the praise. She did just an astonishing job.
Well, and I guess my question would be, okay, so, and again, in the podcast, even learning about the mother and Gabrielle, what an incredible woman she was, right? I mean, getting here young age, learning English in a couple months, and really losing her accent and writing books. And
just insanity. Just this little, if I can give a little background to the audience. She was brought to the United States right after the war, at the age of 8. Her family was, this family of Germans was dropped in the middle of Huntsville, Alabama, because that's where they were starting to work on the space program. And she had to assimilate into the Deep South, and did this in a matter of 3 months. She knew English and was in English classes, and then she went on to become a teacher and an expert in split brain research, and an absolutely astonishing woman. That's the thing. This whole family is full of astonishing people. And also this is an epic family story. It's just that this family survives World War II, and we'll be getting into in further episodes the absolute incredibly dire circumstances they went through. But they survive World War II and then take part in the space program, and it's like from the depths of the most awful things that humanity could bring to arguably the height of humanity's achievements, the space program. Their family was a part of all this. And also, there's this crazy mystery in the man whose name was Robert Lusser. His wife died, as I said, mysteriously at the end of the war. And Suzanne, just through research and being a fantastic journalist, she solves the mystery. Which when we started working on the podcast, we didn't know that she could do that, and she did. So again, all praise to her.
So okay, when you're producing a show like that, do they go out and do the interviews, do the research, and then it all comes together like in an edit, like, hey, this would be a great way to form the narrative? Or is it, hey, these are the steps that we want to hit? Because if you're finding out information that you didn't know, that like it's a documentary, you don't know what you're going to find out. So I feel like it has to come together in the edit.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. She had already done a bunch of the research. She had taken a GoPro with her back to Germany to visit the living relatives that they had. And she also went around the United States for some of her living relatives, but she had been planning to do that just to finish the memoir for her mom. But as I said, when my wife Lisa heard that she had all this amazing audio of these interviews, she said, "That's a podcast. That's what that is." So yeah, you kind of have to do both. You kind of have to have an idea of what the story is, but then you have to roll with the great stuff that comes in, like Suzanne actually finding the researchers that helped her solve the mystery, and then contacting the survivors of that, and she was she you kind of have to just roll with the process and trust it.
And you said Suzanne wrote the show, and you won the Gracie for it, and did a lot of research before you even you and your wife getting involved with your production company. From a producer, what is your main goal when you find the story? Is it to help her lay out the track that you're going to run on? Is it, hey, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that? Kind of what is your role in helping it bring it to life, other than we found the story, go do it? Like, did you have more of an intimate imprint on it?
Well, yeah, because she was very close to the story. This is a story about her family, and it's dealing with the darkest parts of her family's history. So she needs some distance from it. And that's what we provided. We provided where the story, basically structuring the story. Here's where, we feel like you've got to start it with the mission that your mom sent you on writing this memoir. Okay, that's the opening episode as you listened, and but then we got to go back and we got to find out what's the backstory of your grandpa. Okay, then what's the story of how the family survived World War II? Okay, then what's the story of him building this crazy new super bomb? So we figured out how to sort of compartmentalize the episodes and structure the story. But again, we had to move with it because she kept doing research and kept finding different stuff, and we're like, okay, guess we got to change where the story ends. But that's one of the amazing things about podcasts is, of the thing, like movies, television shows, and podcasts are the easiest to go with the way the story is going, because sound editing is it's not you don't have to reshoot a bunch of scenes, you don't have to get all the actors back in, you don't have to it's a medium that allows for that.
Yeah, you don't have to send it to a special effects house and worry about the CGI and are we going to get the shot in time, and
no, you can just tell. Yeah, it's pure storytelling.
Yeah, and it's done so beautifully. And again, going back to just even the inception of her mother asking her to finish her memoir, that is a gargantuan task all in its own. And I could listen to that podcast, just that story.
Well, it was so funny because as we were doing it, we were like, well, and then in the final episode will be you finishing the memoir. And she was like, I'm not sure I can do it. and we said, well, okay, if we can't, we'll figure something else out. But she did end up completing the memoir. She's hoping that the podcast will heighten the awareness of when it does get published. But she's it's again, it's really the journey. That was we always knew that the journey of she and her sister discovering all these new things about her family was going to be what the podcast was about.
Well, what an interesting dichotomy with her mother. And again, I'm sure I'm going to learn more as it goes on, but just her mom having these abilities to help people process their pain and their foundational trauma when she herself really never addressed, she wasn't practicing what she preached, essentially, and in some regard, right? In some regard. And then having this podcast, I feel like, is cathartic for Suzanne, Stephanie, and everybody involved. And also in some ways bringing that chapter of pain, to completion for her mother, and in some ways, even in the afterlife.
Yes, wait till you hear episode 5.
Okay.
Because again, she what she discovers is the reason why her mother couldn't deal with the trauma, because it was so huge. She gets into the depth of what exactly happened to her, and what happened to her grandmother, and then also she gets into the generational trauma of everybody who lived through the war at that point. And it's from an interesting perspective because you realize that these Germans, like especially Suzanne's family in particular, they had no particular bigotry or racism growing up. They didn't seem like people who would fall into the Nazi Party's grip easily at all. Her grandfather was a brilliant man who had some means. He was a successful pilot and inventor, and but he loved building things and he loved inventing things. And in the end, the person he could do that for the most was Adolf Hitler. And so we explore, what kind of moral structure creates that, it's a story of a family surviving its country falling into an authoritarianism, and you see, like, okay, what were the choices I would have made in that situation, and it is a really fascinating exercise.
Wow, the man who calculated death. The podcast out now. Make sure everybody go listen to it. I can't wait to finish. This is the rest of my day, John. This is the rest of my day. It's going to be listening to this podcast. I can't wait to do it. And I appreciate you for helping bring this story to life, telling this story. It's so fascinating, and I really appreciate you joining us this morning to talk a little bit about it.
Oh, thank you so much. The pleasure is mine.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.